Welcome to this week's edition of the Pete Mezzetti Show. I'm your host, Pete Mezzetti. My guest this evening is Betsy, who's the Executive Director of Cost. Welcome.
Thank you.
How are you? Good to see you.
It's great to be here in the lovely town of Westbrook.
Thank you for coming down on such short notice. Thanks for making time. So, Betsy, tell us a little bit about yourself and exactly what is the organization of Cost and what you guys do?
Sure. COST stands for the Connecticut Council of Small Towns. We represent about 115 towns, and we're the only organization that is dedicated exclusively to representing the interests of small towns at the state capitol. So if there's issues affecting small towns, we're there up at the capitol talking to legislators, making sure our municipal leaders are getting in touch with their lawmakers to tell them how particular legislation may affect them in their community.
Okay. Wow, you guys are a very busy organization.
We are busy. We maintain a full-time presence at the state capitol, so if they're in session, we're there. Mm-hmm. And we go out and meet with our towns on a regular basis, convene meetings. We just actually celebrated our 45th anniversary as an organization. Oh, wow. And so that we had an event at the AquaTurf in Plantsville, and
Absolutely.
It was the governor came, and it was very well attended. We had the Commissioner of Transportation, Joe Giuletti, and also the Attorney General, William Tong, as well as several legislators to inform us about various issues that are pending this session.
Very nice. So what are some of the hot topics that you guys that's going on up at the legislature for this session?
Well, one of our top priorities this session is the adoption of a bond package.
Yeah,
and the reason for that is that even though the legislature adopted its budget on time, it did not act on a bond package. And unfortunately, the bond package includes a lot of municipal aid, $150 million in municipal aid. That includes town aid road funding, local capital improvement program funding, and then another category of grants for municipal purposes. Okay. And that's funding that is absolutely critical to small towns. For a lot of small towns, they get more town aid road funding than they do in education cost sharing grants. So that's a big piece of their budget. Yeah. As a result of the failure to adopt a bond package, towns were expecting to have the money in July and then the second installment in January. Unfortunately, that never happened. No. So COST met with the governor's office yesterday, and Governor Ned Lamont did commit to moving forward with a mini bond package that would just focus on those categories of municipal aid. Okay. And that's critical because right now towns need to go out to bid to be able to do the road projects, bridge projects in the spring. If they don't go out to bid soon, they're going to lose a whole construction season.
Yeah, and that you don't want to do.
You don't want to do that, and that's going to end up hurting public safety because well-maintained roads are absolutely critical to making sure that people are safe. But it's also important to our local economic development opportunities, our local economies, because you want well-maintained roads, you want vibrant streetscapes, main streets and downtowns, and all of that funding goes toward that. Right. So we're very thrilled that that is going to be. We expect that there's going to be a vote by the legislature on March 6th. Okay. I would encourage people, if you're listening, watching, to make sure that your legislators know that this is very important and how this may impact you, and that they should support the mini bond package. Apparently, there's some question as to whether or not lawmakers may try to add to that, and that will just end up slowing down this whole process. So we just want to make sure that this municipal aid is fast-tracked and that we can actually get to work soon on those road and bridge projects and other building infrastructure projects that are so critical.
Now, what types of things could they add to it?
Well, the bond package...
Just as an example.
Usually they're very local specific programs. So for example, if your town is interested in building a new senior center, your legislator may want bond money in order to defray the cost of that. Right. Sometimes people have used it for a variety of other things, a new park, a new athletic facility. Okay.
It varies from town to town.
It varies from town to town.
Okay.
And the governor has initiated what he calls a debt diet because he wants to reduce the state's bonded indebtedness, which costs money. You know, it's like running up your credit card. You pay interest on that. And so he's trying to rein that back, and I think our municipal leaders understand why that's important. I certainly understand why lawmakers want to bring back more funding for their towns, because those projects are important too. But I just hope that people recognize that we need to make sure that the roads, bridges, and building infrastructure projects are a priority, and that we can get moving on that fast, and the rest of it can be negotiated as part of the regular session.
Now, how does the debt diet work? I've heard that term in the paper and reading news stories about what's going on in the state.
It's really just focused on reducing the amount of projects that are funded through the bond package. So I know in the past, when the state was facing very severe budget challenges, the Governor Malloy, under his administration, they did move a lot of municipal aid to the bond package. So $60 million, for example, in town aid road funding, which used to be funded through the general fund, is now funded through the bond package. Now, typically, you want to make sure that you're only bonding for capital costs. But town aid road can involve some operating costs. And so there's a question as to whether we should move it back to the general fund. That means towns can rely on that funding. It will get delivered in a timely manner, as opposed to waiting for the bond commission to be bond package to be adopted, and then there's another step where the bond commission actually has to release that funding. And the governor controls the bond commission agenda.
Real? You just taught me something. I didn't know that.
That's well, yeah. It's it has, and there has been some discussion about whether that should be the case. But it's historically been that the governor sets the agenda, and if he wants to release certain money, he does. If not, you kind of go waiting for it. And our towns, what we're hearing from our municipal leaders is that, you know, they understand that the state is facing severe economic challenges. However, they need predictability. They need to be able to rely on predictable local revenue streams. And that means if you're going to provide us with some level of municipal aid, let us know. I mean, towns are already developing their budgets for the upcoming fiscal year. They need to know with some certainty what they can count on. Because otherwise they're going to have to delay or stall certain projects, prioritize other projects. You know, there's a lot of pressure to keep property taxes low. And unfortunately, municipal aid has been flat funded for a number of years for our small towns. I think some of the cities have seen an increase in the amount of education funding, but by and large, the small towns have either seen reductions or flat funding. And the cost of those services, education, public safety, public health, transportation, all of that has gone up and up and up. And so towns are really struggling with trying to control property tax levels and yet still fund quality local services like their educational programs.
As I said to you last evening when we talked to set up tonight, I turned on the news last night. And there you were, but you were also with a friend of mine.
Yes, I was with Joe DeLong from CCM.
Yes, you were.
And also Mike Frieda, the first selectman in North Haven.
Oh, absolutely.
Who is CCM's president.
That's right.
Yeah. So we were all called into the governor's office.
Oh,
no, it was good news.
You were called into the governor's office.
It was very good news, and it was the governor reaffirmed his commitment to moving forward with a municipal aid bond package and fast tracking it so that we would have that money in hand by the end of March. So all good news.
Yay! And that's gonna help your towns and your municipalities.
Right, and it also helps the construction trades. People that need those jobs, and so I think it's just a win-win all around.
Now, what other organizations besides CCM do you guys work with?
We work with a wide range of organizations on various issues. So, for example, on education, we've been speaking with the Connecticut Association of Boards of Education, CABE. and talking about ways to control special education costs, and whether or not there's a concept being floated about creating what they call a special education cost cooperative.
Okay.
And what this would do would allow towns to basically pay into a captive insurance program, and that pay a premium, and then that captive insurance program would reimburse the town for excess special education costs.
Okay.
We're still finding out more about it. Honestly, it's a very complicated issue, and we're meeting with the Connecticut School and State Finance Project to talk about that in the next couple weeks.
Oh, wow.
We also partner with organizations like the Connecticut Forest and Park Association on open space issues. They take the lead on preserving our parks and forests, and we appreciate that. And there's also, I mean, it depends on the issue. Sometimes we're working with the chiefs of police, the firefighters. Sometimes we're at odds with some of these groups. You know, but we all try to work together cooperatively and just make sure that we can develop some thoughtful solutions to the issues that are facing Connecticut.
And I heard you mention the accurate the word of CABE with Bob Rader.
Right, Bob Rader.
Bob was actually here not long ago and was on with me to talk about CABE and exactly what they do.
Yeah, he's been at the helm of CABE for a number of years now.
I talked to him the other day, and he's like, I want to come back on again with Mezzetti. I'm like, Bob, I'm sure I could make that happen. All I got to do is look at my schedule.
Well, I'm sure there'll be a lot of education issues to talk about.
Oh, definitely.
It's always a big issue.
Oh, definitely. So you guys deal with 115 towns in the state of Connecticut.
Right.
So there's 169. So there's towns you guys don't work with.
Well, we represent all of the small towns at the state capital. However, there are 115 that are dues-paying member towns. And we appreciate that. We also have associate members that provide services or products that our towns rely on. A lot of engineering firms, law firms, disaster recovery firms, restoration firms, runs the whole gamut. So they do support our activities. And there are also other issues in addition to budgetary issues that we're focusing on. Towns are now being faced with a lot of environmental compliance requirements. So some of these come down from the federal government, some from the state, but they're really struggling to address these issues. And one of the issues that COST is spearheading this session is a bill to assist towns in complying with the Stormwater Management General Permit. And this is something that is costing towns really hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to comply with. And it requires you to do all kinds of things. First, you have to do public education and outreach, trying to make sure that the public knows why they're picking up dog waste at the park, why they shouldn't be feeding the geese around the ponds, because all that contributes to issues that impair our water quality. Why they should be, how they should be cleaning their catch basins, picking up sand off the road and things like that, all of which costs a lot of money. So we're focused on a bill to assist towns in doing that. We're hoping to meet with the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection to discuss that. And I think it's could be a win-win for both the towns and the environment if we're able to put towns in a good position in terms of towards compliance with some of the requirements. I think what we're looking for is more flexibility.
Wow. You guys are a very busy organization.
We are. And I did just come, I mentioned earlier, from a meeting with the State Department of Energy and Environmental Protection to talk about waste management.
How'd that go?
Another big issue. It was a great meeting. We had a lot of our member towns at the table. It was a smaller meeting, but to talk about some of the challenges that they're facing in terms of reducing the solid waste that is disposed by their residents, and also the issue of recycling. That has been a huge issue. Now, recycling used to actually generate revenues for towns, used to make money off of it. And now towns are seeing that the cost of even getting rid of the recyclables is going up and up
Right.
because the market has fallen apart. And this has to do with the China National Sword Policy, which indicated that China no longer is going to be taking recyclables because they don't meet certain standards. There's certain contamination. And when we move to single stream recycling in this state, unfortunately what happens is all the broken glass contaminates the cardboard.
Yes.
So now they're not taking the cardboard. The glass is mucking up the machines. People continue to throw the plastic bags in the recycle bin. Those are mucking up the machines.
Right.
And so we're trying to figure out that issue and how best to address it. And quite honestly, it's a huge issue. And it's got a lot of different moving parts. The other part of that is that we have these waste to energy plants, like the materials Mira in Hartford, which serves 51 towns, in some of which are in this area. And they are struggling because they're trying to move forward with a contract to have somebody come in and take over the facility to do the upgrades that are necessary to keep it moving forward and to address the system capacity issues. But it's a lot, and it's going to cost those member towns a lot of money. They're going to end up seeing some very significant increases in their tipping fees. So what we're trying to do is figure out what are the alternatives, what are the other options.
Right. And you mentioned the acronym of MIRA, and I believe another mutual friend of ours is Carl Fortuna.
Right.
From the town of Old Saybrook.
Yes, Carl Fortuna is a very active member of COST.
Yes, yeah.
And he has also serves on MIRA's board.
That's right, yeah.
And
Carl.
so we are talking with folks like Carl and other people on the board, as well as some of the towns that are served by MIRA, to try to figure out how to address this.
Right.
And so what we decided today was to hold a forum at DEEP in the upcoming weeks to give our municipal leaders the opportunity to discuss these issues, to kind of figure out what are the alternatives, what are they doing in other regions of the state with their facilities, what can we do in terms of separating the glass out of the blue bin so that maybe we can, there is somewhat of a market for that, and there's a growing market.
Okay.
So it's a big issue. What we're trying to do is get everybody in the room, get the town leaders in the room, and just try to figure out how to move forward with a solution.
How do you think it's going to go?
After today's meeting, I'm encouraged that people are willing to discuss various options.
Okay.
And I think DEEP has been very good about providing some direction, providing some expertise, and both COST and CCM are committed to bringing the parties together to try to develop some, again, thoughtful solutions to these issues.
Wow, so it sounds to me like it could work.
It could work. It may not be this session.
Right.
It's a short
That's
session.
right, short session this year.
Short session, election year, it's tough. The session actually adjourns on May 6th.
Yep.
Not far away.
No.
And there are a lot of other issues that need to be undertaken. And there's a lot of players involved in waste management.
Okay.
And so trying to get everybody into a position where they're all supportive is going to be difficult. We really need the leadership of the state and the governor to move forward with a proposal. The governor has initiated a proposal. We were talking about that today. So I think we're on track. It may not be this session, but I'm hopeful that we can move forward with some resolution of these issues soon.
What are some of the other issues that COST works on during the legislative session that we can talk about? Housing
is a big issue.
Okay.
Always, there have been in the past proposals to require towns to meet certain affordable housing goals.
Okay.
So if a town is unable to meet this, 10% of their housing stock has to be deemed affordable in order for them to be in compliance.
Okay.
Now, unfortunately, that's a very difficult threshold for a small town.
Right.
A lot of small towns may not have the water or wastewater capacity to support multifamily housing. They may have environmentally sensitive lands. They may have flooding issues in certain area. You see that down the shoreline a lot. And so we were very concerned in the past that the affordable housing proposal had a big stick approach. It ended up penalizing towns that didn't meet that goal. even if they didn't meet it for reasons that were beyond their control, such as a really flat housing market, or maybe the fact that the developers just didn't come forward with anything appropriate for their community. This year, there's more of a focus on providing incentives, providing assistance to towns to encourage them to comply with the affordable housing goals. So they took away the stick. They're not going to withhold funding for those towns if they don't meet the goals. They're really trying to figure out what are the issues that they're facing in meeting those goals. How can we help our towns plan for the kind of housing that they want, that makes sense in their community, before they're forced to kind of accept an affordable housing project that just really is too big or too unwieldy for their community for a variety of reasons.
Okay. Wow.
So that's certainly going to be a hot topic this session. Some of the other issues are very smaller issues. We deal with a lot of planning and development issues. Should there be alternate members of zoning boards? Should there be a public hearing requirement on this construction project? And so you end up submitting testimony on a wide range of issues. Another of our big priority issues this year, however, is dead and decaying trees. And you might have heard a little bit about this. So because of the emerald ash borer and the gypsy moth, combined with some drought conditions a couple years ago, we actually have a significant number of dead and decaying trees, which unfortunately are located along our roadways.
Okay.
And so you've seen that Eversource and the Department of Transportation have been clearing trees along the highways, and they're doing it for public safety reasons.
Yeah.
If those trees end up falling during a storm or a wind event, it can be devastating.
Absolutely.
Not only will it bring down power lines and end up resulting in sustained power outages, it could actually fall on people. There have been incidences where these trees have fallen and injured people.
Wow.
And that's just something we can't allow to happen.
No, definitely not.
And some of these ash trees, they just disintegrate. It's not even, you don't expect it, they just end up falling apart. And so we need to make sure that towns have the resources to remove those trees. That's sort of where the Town Aid Road funding comes in, because that can be used for that. But we need to step up our efforts to do that. And so there will be a bill this session to give towns additional resources to help them coordinate with the state that may have the equipment and the contractors that the towns are scrambling to try to find. And also to make sure that Eversource and United Illuminating have the budget to be able to do the tree trimming that they need to do. They'd actually exhausted their budget, and their budgets are approved by the Public Utilities Regulatory Authority, and they had exhausted their budget for tree trimming, and that was a big concern. So I know COST did submit comments to Pura to say, you know what, this is important. It's a public safety issue. Make sure that Eversource and United Illuminating can actually budget to do the tree removal that needs to be done.
Right, and it probably costs a little bit of money to trim trees.
It does, and some towns were scrambling to find contractors because they were all being taken up by larger projects. And so the small towns sometimes were at the end of a very long list of towns waiting for the contractors. But you do see it, and it is happening. And fortunately, it's been a very mild winter. We haven't had a lot of terrible storm events.
No, thank you.
So that has been a godsend.
That's been a wonderful thing. The warm winter, the normal winter, which I don't know about you, but I'm okay with it.
I'm okay with it.
I'm fine with it.
We have a lot of meetings in the winter, and it's always tough when there's a lot of snow on the road. And so it has helped because towns haven't had to use up their snow removal budgets. Also, another issue related to that is the issue of road salt. So towns are beginning to be concerned about the road salt applications because what's happening is it's contaminating some of our groundwater supplies. So people are seeing it in their wells. And also it has a very corrosive impact on machinery and fire hydrants and water mains and things like that. So there is a bill that is pending before the Environment Committee to make sure that people are adhering to best management practices when they're applying road salt, that they're not overdoing it, that there's a kind of a balance between clearing the roads and making sure they're safe, but minimizing the impact of road salt and chloride.
Exactly. I was going to say, isn't there the liquid stuff that they spray on the...
Right, yeah.
I don't know what it's called.
Well, it's a sodium chloride.
Sodium chloride, okay.
Right.
Okay.
So,
We got a little bit more time left, so what else would we like to bring up and educate our viewers and our listeners about?
well, I think it's important for them to pay attention to everything that's happening at the state capitol. I know everyone gets bogged down with hearing what's happening in Washington, and that's certainly always something going on.
Oh, absolutely.
But the state legislature adopts a number of laws that will impact your daily life.
Right.
Whether you ride a bicycle, whether you drive a car, whether you're a nurse or a doctor or a teacher, there's always something that's going to impact you. And so you do want to make sure that you pay attention. I think Connecticut is very fortunate. We have very committed legislators who devote a lot of their time to addressing some of the concerns that are facing our residents and our businesses, and they'll be very proactive. So I would reach out to them if you're having issues. I think it's important for them to hear. And I think, we're seeing a dynamic now where people are getting more proactive in terms of coming up to the Capitol. You've seen it on tolls. You've seen it on another issue that COS isn't involved with, but on the immunization issue. And it's making a difference. People are hearing what these people are having to say. And so I think, for the rest of us that tend to be a little more quiet and not come out, I think it's time that we all stand up and make sure that the legislature is addressing the issues that we feel are important. And because I think I grew up in Connecticut, I love Connecticut, and I want to make sure that this is a place where I can continue to live and see my grandchildren grow up and go on to have their own families. But I think we have a lot of challenges, and I think we have to work together to address those challenges.
Betsy Gara from COS, thanks for coming down. We'll see you again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to have on. Thank you.
Thank you. On behalf of Betsy, I'm Pete Mezzetti. Thanks, good night, and we'll see you next time.